everyone, welcome to another Book Review Wednesday, and today I'm going to be briefly diving into Jurassic Park. Yes, there is actually a book that is based on the Spielberg film, and it was quite popular from what I could gather, and has definitely gained even broader significance through Spielberg's adaptation. But in and of itself is quite an interesting take, especially considering the fact that the Spielberg film draws on a lot of parallels, but also has significant differences to the book. So this book was written by Michael Crichton, and it is a quite interesting book, to say the least. Because although the plot and characters for the most part remain the same, even though there are some significant differences to them, the overall premise is also something that is very similar within the book. But there are these striking differences as far as plot and characters, as well as the mood. So similarities to characters and plot, but differences as well. Premise is pretty much the same, but the overall approach as far as the atmosphere is quite more grim and dark, I think, compared to the whimsical Spielberg version. So basically, you have the billionaire named John Hammond, who is within the film as well, who is the owner of InGen, and basically he decides to establish a biological preserve around Costa Rica, and this biological preserve is technically Jurassic Park. So basically he is creating the park for pretty much the same reasons that are outlined within the film. Money, and to draw a significant crowd of people to go see cloned dinosaurs, which they do make within this film like they do, or within this book like they do within the film. So what unfortunately happens is some incidents that are highlighted within the beginning of the book. They are a little different than the way in which the film plays out as far as these incidents are concerned. And it kind of, what ends up happening as a result of these incidents is that it calls the investors into question, because basically I guess they are the ones that are funding John Hammond's kind of quote-unquote Jurassic Park. And so they kind of send their lawyer to kind of go investigate, whose name is Donald Gennaro. I think that's how you pronounce it. But not only do the investors send him, there is also a mathematician named Ian Malcolm who comes to the park as well, and you will see how he is fairly skeptical of the way in which John Hammond is conducting this whole kind of experiment, as well as the lawyer. But John Hammond, to kind of get himself some leverage, decides to gather up a paleontologist named Alan Grant and his graduate student named Ellie Sater to kind of come in as consultants to kind of get their overall impression of Jurassic Park. And I think he primarily uses them as a means to kind of get the lawyer at least to see the positive side of his viewpoint, especially considering the fact that he is calling up a paleontologist, so someone who's really invested into dinosaurs and really enjoys dinosaurs, and he thinks that this probably would vote well in his favor and make it seem like that the investors don't have to really necessarily worry. So those two are kind of used as leverage for that. And again, pretty much the events that lead up from there are fairly similar to the way in which they're presented within the film. You have the one guy who double crosses, you have the lack of electricity within the park, and you have basically dinosaurs running around trying to eat people too. So again, you have all of that within the film, or within the book, pretty much in a similar way in which the film approaches it. Now, the reason why I say I think this version's a lot more darker is because I think John Hammond's character in particular within the book is a little bit more driven by money, and you can sort of tell that he's more invested into that angle of it, and not necessarily on the kind of, dream aspect of Jurassic Park and, what it could maybe bring to people, because it's, I think, a lot more emphasized within the film how John Hammond's character is very bubbly and friendly and eccentric, and this John Hammond seems to me, at least from the book, to be a little bit more a guy that's, out for the money and what this investment will bring him. I think more so than the whole the whole emotional attachment to the idea that he's presenting or what he's kind of created. I think he doesn't seem to be that, I think, emotionally invested into what he's creating, so much as he knows that this would be a good business opportunity, something something that's just never been done before. I just think he sees this whole venture a whole lot differently than the way John Hammond sees it within the film. So again, I think that's an important contrast to note, and I think that's why the John Hammond in the book is a little bit more, he's more concerned about what could come from the venture rather than the venture itself. And the thing too is even towards the end of the book, he's already kind of thinking about starting up another Jurassic Park, despite what ends up happening with the dinosaurs. Unlike the John Hammond with the film, which I believe he knows, he seems to be a little bit more grounded in that he sort of understands the mistakes and how what he has is just sort of a dream. It's not something that can work so practically within reality. And he sort of seems like within the end of the film he comes to that kind of realization. But within the book it doesn't seem that way at all. So again, it's a little bit more grim in that sense, especially when you see the events that end up unfolding. It's, again, quite similar to the film, surprisingly, but has some interesting differences as well. So if you're looking for, I think, a more grittier interpretation of Jurassic Park, a little bit more of a less whimsical and less awe-inspiring kind of interpretation, I think the book will definitely suit you well. However, if you are looking something that completely captures the essence that Spielberg's version captured, you won't, I think, really find it here within the book, because the book, again, has that darker undertone to it, and it's a little bit more focused on trying to be have at least different scenarios with plot and characters presented to it. So Again, I think that's really ultimately all I can say, though, about the book without really giving too much away. I wish I had a copy of it for me, but unfortunately I had to return it to the library. But definitely worthy of recommendation, and there is technically a sequel to the book, The Lost World. And it sort of ends in a kind of to be continued fashion. So I'll try to see if I can get around to reading the sequel to the story. I think that would be quite interesting, um, and see how it even stacks up to Spielberg's, um, you know, sequel that he tried to do with it, which I think unfortunately didn't really work out too well for Spielberg. But yeah, thank you though so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.